A great evil architects the fall of the Dragonflights. You felt its presence in the madness of Neltharion, the pain of Malagos, and the constant assaults on the Timeways. Now, a darkness lurks somewhere in the future. It does not let you look back into the past or beyond that moment. The hour of twilight, the end time. Then you see something strange. Thrall, being in the War of the Ancients, doesn't make sense. And there he is again, during the Winterscorn War, atop Zandalari ziggurats thousands of years in the past, standing amidst mountain ranges ravaged by the Elemental War. He appears again and again. Thrall, son of Duratan, in places he shouldn't. You realize he's following you, he's reaching out to you, and then you realize who you are. You are Nozdormu, the Timeless One. In that moment, your infinite fractal selves reform in the caverns of time, a potential timeway reflecting from each of your bronze scales. For these mortals, you have been gone for years, but no event went unwitnessed in your investigation. Now you know the great evil that looms over dragons, the old gods. Their agent, at least for now, is Murozond. This video is made possible by our patrons. All of the custom footage, custom scenes, that stuff is extremely time consuming, meaning that this is a video that absolutely will lose a bunch of money, but that's almost the point. We want to be able to make those dumb decisions because the end result is just cool. If we can go the extra mile, why not? Now, patrons get early access to content, including the next episode of this series, as well as physical loot and podcasts. We've got November's Warlock Month class card art and the awesome pin. And with all of this, I've been able to expand our lore team, including on the video front, to make more videos like this that require so many man-hours actually be possible. So if you would like more things like this in the channel's future and fantastic perks, be sure to hit up the link below. Patrons, thank you, and let's get back to the story. Nozdormu was a dust-brown proto-drake who was as instrumental as the other aspects in defeating Galakrond. Yes, he was a little more patient and far-sighted than the others, but he was just as savage. In reality, it's a disservice to begin his story with the proto-drakes, because out of all the aspects, he was the most fundamentally changed upon the uplifting of the dragons. Highkeeper Ra, the Hand of Amenthul on Azeroth, personally empowered Nozdormu and said this.
Unto you is charged the great task of keeping the purity of time. Know that there is only one true timeline, though there are those who would have it otherwise. You must protect it. Without truth of time as it is meant to unfold, more will be lost than you can possibly imagine. The fabric of reality will unravel. It is a heavy task, the base of all tasks on this world, for nothing can transpire without time.
Nozdormu is then shown the totality of time, from beginning to end. Through it all, he saw one brutal moment, his own death. We'll discuss its significance later, but for now, just know that he was shown this to reinforce his sacred charge. Keep the purity of the one true timeline, even if, in that timeline, you die. The other aspects were given something tangible, like the Emerald Dream or the planet itself. Nozdormu was given a concept, the base of all tasks of this world, and if he failed, it would have dire consequences, not just for the planet, but for reality itself. The old gods have fought asymmetric war with the Titans from the very beginning. Their whispers weave through mountains, twisting minds. Their agents are found in every realm. Another front, then, is time. Before old gods revealed themselves in Neltharion's downfall, they trapped Nozdormu in time, meaning that he missed the War of the Ancients. But he was freed in time to bless Nordrassil. His blessing in particular meant the Kaldorei would never age past their time, making them immortal beings. But there's a problem with understanding Nozdormu: causality. See, it's not for another 10,000 years that Nozdormu is involved in the War of the Ancients. Now, if that's confusing, we'll get to that. In those thousands of years, Nozdormu's love of mortals grew, but they could never see reality from his perspective. He blessed Zarantor and Jonathan the Revelator with immortality, so they could watch history unfold. And theoretically, they are still out there. At one time, he attends Chromie's Visage Day, explaining that visage forms were as much about seeing the world from the perspective of the mortals as it was about how mortals would perceive the dragons. We get a sense of that love and alienation. He wants to connect, but his perspective is so mind-bending that there is no one other than Aman'Thul who really understands how he sees reality. A great deal of time passes, and now we're at the Second and Third Wars, where the dragon aspects were nowhere to be seen. Alexstrasza was recovering from slavery, Ysera was sleeping, Malygos was mad, and Deathwing was evil. So, when Nordrassil was replanted, it was not blessed by the aspects. But that's small stuff now. Nozdormu didn't have time on his hands because he was on the hunt for the great evil destroying the Dragonflights. He delved into the Timeways and, without noticing or subtly directing, began splitting himself between them. With the last of his will, he discovered an anomaly. Believing it his salvation, he sent Crassus and Ronan to investigate, and then he became utterly lost. At the end of their adventure, Nozdormu would briefly return to clarity, but still, his adventures in the Timeway were only just beginning. Nozdormu was gone for years. In his absences, the Timeways became dangerous. An evil lurked there. Chromie searched for Nozdormu in the Bronze Dragon Shrine, but all that was shown was a vision of the leader of the Infinite Dragonflight, not the Nozdormu that Chromie had been looking for. Thrall's life was actually affected. Different versions of his escape from Durnhold existed in his head. He was sent by Ysera to the Caverns of Time, where he discovered that the Bronze Dragons were in crisis. A new, infinite dragonflight was contesting the Timeways, and just then, they attacked the caverns. Thrall was sent hurtling into a portal through time. Thrall traveled various timelines getting his bearings. The elements existed in each timeline and were able to help him find Nozdormu. But the Timeless One appeared only as an image, beckoning Thrall. Nozdormu reappeared in every moment of Thrall's life, which gave him a realization. This was the same Nozdormu in every timeline. There was only one timeline, past, present, and future, and Nozdormu was trapped in all of them at once. The story gets rather out there, but in that knowledge, Thrall closed his eyes and suddenly found himself outside of the Timeways, in space without space, with infinite portals to every conceivable point in time around him. Nozdormu witnessed the one Thrall through them all and was able to reform himself, bringing both back to the Caverns of Time. Nozdormu knew everything that had befallen the dragon aspects at the hands of one enemy, the old gods. And he also knew that one day he would lead the infinite dragonflight. Bronze drakes who travelled the timeways would often not return, or would do so on the verge of death, only to witness Nozdormu's eyes and pass, an expression of terror left on their rigid faces. Murozond was actively hunting those who would not side with him when the time came. For that is the danger of having an enemy that assaults you from the future. The Infinites, Twilights, and Black Dragons attacked Azeroth as heralds of void as Deathwing made his return in the Cataclysm. Nozdormu knew this was all connected. Defeating Deathwing would require a version of the Dragon Soul, snatched from the long past during the cataclysmic War of the Ancients. A small task for Nozdormu, but he no longer controlled the timeways. Nozdormu, the aspects, and the adventurers of Azeroth finally would find Murozond in a desolate future known as the End Time. There, Murozond was defeated. The Dragon Soul was eventually recovered, and Deathwing was destroyed. The Hour of Twilight, that moment that Nozdormu could not look past, had came and went. Nozdormu's last great act before revoking his power was to lock Deathwing's death in time, never to be altered. Now we come to the dark side of Nozdormu's coin. But it's more complicated than Murozond simply being evil. It begins with Nozdormu's death, that moment that he had seen through time, all the way back when he was originally uplifted by the Titan Keeper Ra. As we've seen, Nozdormu's hunt for the great evil is ever present in his lore, yet at some point we know that great evil gets him. And I'm not talking about being trapped in time. At some point in the future, likely within the span of the Dragonflight expansion, the Void will convince Nozdormu that there is a way to cheat his own death. Some things don't add up here, like Nozdormu understanding how important his charge in protecting the one true timeline is. It has dire consequences for reality, as at some point he will try to change the course of future events to cheat his own death. In that moment, the timeways will break and echo back to all of our strife fighting the infinite dragonflight, some sort of loop of chaos and torment. Or perhaps so he thinks. Whatever happens though, it is not fear of death that drives Nozdormu. I think we need to look elsewhere. Murozond took a moment to give us his motivations before dying a death that he surely saw coming. Nozdormu called it the End Time, but back then he didn't know. For Murozond, his time-twisted future self, would call that very same End Time a blessing that he and we simply could not comprehend. To be clear, the End Time is utter void domination of Azeroth. And as we're coming to understand now, that pretty much means all of the cosmos, given how powerful and foundational Azeroth is. It was only under that circumstance that Murozond saw anything surviving at all, this void future. Somehow, out of all the realities he saw, this is the one that was the best. So, when did he see that dark future that the End Time would avert? When did he begin weaving fate so tirelessly toward one end? Many speculate that there's quite a lot going on here, and that is somewhat beyond the scope of a video like this, but I will leave you with a brain teaser. He was charged with upholding the timeline, as said by the Titans who are beings of order. So of course they will have one true timeline. Maybe it's the case that at some point the void opens, Nozdormu's eyes, and perhaps he understands that not only can he avert his own death, but that in doing so, he would avert the Titan's final goal from happening. Because perhaps that goal is not as good as we may think. It has been said time and time again that something truly horrific is coming. The jailer whispered it, yet the void all but shouted it. At some point, Nozdormu will hear the void, and he will try to subvert his own death. But the question is, and what we may learn very soon in this expansion, does he do this to save himself, or does he do it in a twisted way to save the cosmos itself? That, everyone, is the promise of Nozdormu's character arc.